Good evening, everyone, and happy Thursday. It's almost 5:30. Mike and I just started our walk. You may have noticed there was no short or anything yesterday. That's because we didn't walk. We played hooky yesterday.
Took a much needed day off yesterday.
We ended up coming home from work early and just going out to dinner. And then we came home and watched some TV.
In our pajamas.
Yeah, and we didn't walk and we didn't cook and we didn't do anything last night. So we're gonna try to get at least 2 miles in today. That'll put us at 16 miles. If you're new here, we're doing a movement challenge for the month of March, and we're trying to get in 50 miles during the month of March. So this'll put us probably right around 16 so far. And when we get back home, we're gonna cook some dinner and sit down and talk about our book with you guys. So
yeah, we're gonna talk about the chapter that we thought we were gonna do on Tuesday because we skipped a chapter. So
oops.
We should be well versed on this chapter.
Yeah, when I accidentally read the wrong chapter. Yeah, so we'll be ready to sit down and eat. I'm hungry. Because we went out to eat last night, I was having a little bit of tummy issues last night.
It's not because you ate anything bad.
No, I ate on plan. I stayed keto.
We ate a lot, though. I will say that.
Yeah, but my stomach was not feeling great last night, and so today I just actually ended up fasting all day. I didn't want to be out working and door dashing and having to try to find the nearest restroom to run to. So
there's nothing worse because, it used to be you could go into any restaurant at any given moment and you could use the restroom, but some of them still don't let you use the restrooms anymore.
And we pick up at a lot of places that don't have
and a lot of them
restrooms.
Don't have them.
Yeah.
Not public restrooms anyway.
Right. With that being said, we'll get this walk in and we'll get something cooked because I am hungry, and we'll sit down and talk with you guys in a little bit. All right, we're back. Just got back from our walk and got dinner made. It didn't really turn out exactly how I had hoped. We made the halloumi cheese fries and they look more like cheese curds.
Yeah.
Like they just broke apart.
Yeah, they didn't come out quite like the cheese sticks like they did last time.
And then we just did hot dogs wrapped in bacon. They're the Teton hot dogs.
Yeah, but I'm sure they're going to be delicious anyway. It doesn't matter. There's not a bad cheese that I know of.
But last night we had filet, and I had filet and lobster, so this is not even like
in one extreme to the next.
Right? No comparison at all. I have a little bit of the Primal Kitchen ketchup and some mustard.
And I just have Redmond's real salt.
It's actually the smoked salt.
The smoked. Either way, it's still Redmond and it still says real salt right on the container. I love this with hot dogs. It just tastes so good with hot dogs.
While I'm thinking about it, guys, if you watch other keto YouTubers, you probably know this already, but KetOH-IO has the maple waffle flavored KetOH-IO back in stock. It had been out of stock. They sold out and they finally got it back in stock. So if that's something you're interested in, it does make really good like chaffles because it already has like the maple flavor in it. If you want to order some of that, click through my link down below and you'll get 10% off, and it also helps our channel. But I did want to let everyone know that that was back in stock. Now they say there's plenty of it, so it shouldn't be sold out in an hour like it has been in the past. That was the big thing with the blueberry and the waffle. As the stuff sells out before anybody even knows it's back in stock, it's already gone again.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't take it for granted that there's plenty, because people buy that stuff up they just buy it up like crazy. So.
Yeah, I need to put in an order as well anyway because we need some stuff. But so I talked about it while we were walking, how I fasted today. So this is the first thing that I've had. But what did you eat for lunch today?
Well, it's interesting that you fasted after we had that dinner last night. First of all, it was fantastic. We spared no expense. We ate good. Steaks were good. I had salmon. She had lobster tail. Fantastic. We both got an appetizer. I had asparagus with my meal. She had Brussels sprouts. I did do my keto flexible meal. I had potato soup. It's just one of my downfalls. I also had a carbonated beverage. There was so much food and we were so stuffed that I still had steak left and some asparagus left. So I took that to work today and ate that for lunch, and it was perfect. It was even good reheated. It tasted really good. So I had that for lunch. I had a few pork rinds, water. So it came out real nice, good lunch. And that's one thing I like about when we do go out to dinner. If we eat heartily, shall I say, we have leftovers, it makes a perfect lunch for the next day. I also had with my lunch a snack afterwards, immediately following, and it was that energy bar, I don't know what it was called, that you received.
I don't either. It was a free thing that I got with the Thrive Market order. When you place an order with them, almost every month they have like a free item.
It wasn't terrible. I mean, again, it wasn't something that I would ask you to purchase later. I don't know if you felt that way about it, but it wasn't
good. Keto.
Oh.
I mean, that's the one thing about Thrive Market that bothers me is that if I'm ordering keto foods, the item that you send me isn't a free keto item. It's just whatever. Now, it wasn't awful if you do total carbs. I think there were 20 total carbs in one of the bars, which I've seen keto bars that have that much or more in it. It had 4 grams of fiber, so if you took the fiber off, it would be like 16 net carbs. So not, the worst thing I've ever seen, but I would never buy them again. They were just a free thing.
So I did have that as well. Before we get into the book, I just want to say again, I'm excited about the KetOH-IO meetup. My first one. I'm getting pumped. We're 2 weeks away, basically. I'm just really looking forward to it, so can't get here fast enough. I'm not trying to wish my life away, but I'm definitely looking forward to that weekend.
And we only have a little over a week until our first live. I'm not going to lie, I'm nervous about.
I'm not really nervous about the live, and to be honest with you, I'm not really even thinking about it. I literally haven't even hardly thought about the fact that we're going to try it. I figure it's going to be just like what we're doing now, except we're going to have interaction. So I kind of feel like it's going to be a natural thing.
No editing. I can't edit out the stuff that he says.
Believe me, I will be on my best behavior, maybe.
We'll see. So anybody new to our channel, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Mike and I, we're in the process of reading the book, The Case Against Sugar. So we have dinner and we discuss what we read. This week we are reading the first half of chapter 5. This chapter was titled The Early Bad Science, and bad was in parentheses. And basically what the first half of this chapter is talking about is the fact that sugar was actually touted at one point as being a good thing. People thought of it as helping people become more robust. It gave people energy. It made people who were sick and thin, like too thin, it made them fatter, which duh. But they actually thought that that was a good thing. So that's why they say, the early science, but it was bad science of what they actually thought about sugar in the early 20th century.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is that, like a lot of things, I mean, you don't really know everything about something immediately. Mm-hmm. It's going to take time. And that's what's happened with sugar. Obviously, those early signs, those early benefits, so to speak, of sugar, I mean, those were real things, but the long-term effects, those were all short-term, instant effects of sugar, but the long-term effects we are now learning about.
It says here that in the early decades of the 20th century, in medical journals and newspapers, physicians could be found blaming sugar for many ills. And what it lists here is diabetes, rheumatism, gallstones, jaundice, liver disease, inflammation, gaseous indigestion, sleeplessness, tooth decay, ulcers, and intestinal diseases, neurological disorders, cancer. They were all blamed on sugar. Now we know they were right. When they were saying that.
Well, they saw an increase in a lot of that stuff. Mm. And it correlated with the increase in consumption of sugar. I mean, right. it was a natural connection, but again, some of the benefits, if you will, like you said, the energy.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, the whole making you fatter. People they thought were too skinny.
Because they were thin because they were sick, or, it wasn't just because they were naturally thin people. There was a reason that they were overly thin. They would use sugar to plump them up and make them more robust.
But you would think that would be like an instant sign. You know what I mean?
No, they thought
it was a good thing.
That was a good thing.
But that just goes to show you that, again, over the long haul, we're starting to see the true effects, the long-term health effects. And the things that they were touting as being a result of too much sugar, turns out, like you said, they were right on the money, right, even back then.
But then at some point, sugar just became a huge debate. They say, do those who get fat do so, as some suggested, through merely consuming sugar in excessive quantities, or through some unique characteristic of sugar itself? Either way, I guess I don't understand really what the difference is. If it's because of a unique characteristic of sugar, or if it's because the sugar itself,
well, either way,
overeating it causes you. to gain weight.
Well, I think what that means though is if it's a unique characteristic of sugar, you could either try and remove that characteristic maybe, or that you could eat in smaller quantities and it would be okay. But if it's the overconsumption, then yeah, you would have to reduce the amount you eat. One of the two you could manage, while the other one would be something that you would almost have to permanently eliminate.
Right.
And so I could see where there would be a little bit of debate there.
It was just a huge debate between, people in the medical field, some saying, it's good for you, others saying it's causing health problems. So, they went back and forth. There was a gentleman in here that was quoted. He was trying to defraud the fact that sugar was bad for you. And he said, he knows people from his experience, like his grandfather who lived to be 100, the Duke of Beaufort, died at 71. Both of them ate excessive amounts of sugar by the standards of that era, but lived to be old.
Well, lived to be old, but 70 and 100. I mean, that's a 30-year difference. I think that's
in that time frame, it was still considered to be a long life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's saying, if sugar's bad for you, then, this person lived to be 100 and this person lived to be 71. It also says that in his own experience, this guy's name was Slare, Slare. I don't even know if I'm saying it correctly. But he said, speaking of his own health experience, he indulged in large quantities of sugar and was able to write without spectacles. So he didn't have to wear glasses, and he could read small print and could walk 10 or 15 miles with ease or ride 30 or 40 miles a day. Now, that's all great and wonderful. But what they were saying is that's like saying somebody who smokes a pack of cigarettes every single day but happens to live to be 100, but then to say, okay, but cigarettes don't cause lung cancer because, you live to be 100 and you smoked a pack a day.
Well, it goes back to the studies that they talked about in the earlier chapters. It depends on who you study and how many you study. That's a one isolated case.
Yeah.
You can't use that as a basis of anything.
But there are going to be people who smoke who
and never get lung cancer.
They'll never get lung cancer. They'll live long lives.
Right.
Now, whether or not the lives are great.
Well, see, that's another thing that I was going to touch on. So the two people that lived, one lived to be 100, one lived to be 71. But you don't know what kind of lives they had. You don't know what kind of other health issues they had. It doesn't say. It just says that they lived to be that long. Well, that doesn't mean anything. We've talked about quality of life.
But then he uses himself as an example that he has a high quality of life and he eats excess sugar.
Well, he's one of the lucky ones.
And that's kind of where I was going with that. Was, again, there are going to be people who smoke who won't get lung cancer, but that doesn't mean that smoking doesn't increase your chances of getting lung cancer.
Or that it's even good for you at all, period.
So just going back to what we talked about, how people were saying sugar is actually a good thing because, it's putting weight on people. It says here that in this era, malnutrition and undernutrition were pervasive problems. So the people were really thin, and it wasn't because they were just naturally thin. It was because they were undernourished. And that sugar had the ability to put fat on the lean or emaciated, and it was widely perceived as one of the beneficial qualities of sugar.
Now, that makes me think about, why are these people malnourished? Is it because there's just not enough to eat and they're not eating enough? Or is it because they're eating more sugar-based food items? We read about here in America during the Great Depression, sugar was cheap, so everybody ate stuff that was made out of sugar.
Yeah.
So how do we know that wasn't the same thing? And so initially you would be malnourished because clearly sugar is not going to give you the nourishment you need. But then over a course of time, then it starts to put weight on because now you're talking about that beneficial quality. I don't know. That could be up for debate, I suppose.
Well, that's kind of what this whole chapter was about, was just the debate on the early science and what the different doctors were saying. Right. Again, here it just talks about, how sugar could cause lean people to grow fat, and that would increase the vigor of their bodies. So I guess at one time that was just considered a good thing. So obviously they found that sugar, fructose, and sucrose gave people quick energy. So that was one of the other benefits of it. You could eat this and you're going to have like a quick burst of energy. They basically almost used it like a quick stimulant, and they also considered it a performing enhancing drug because of the fact that you could eat that and immediately have like a surplus of energy.
Well, it's funny too because this chapter, they also talk about this bad science has been continued on all this time. Like, it's still bad science. Now, they're just now starting to get the good science and learn the truth. But it's interesting about the quick energy and the performance enhancing quality that they gave it. In high school, I ran track, and every night before a meet at practice, our coach would tell us to load up on carbs.
Carb up.
As if we were going to store all that for the next day.
Yeah, it'd be gone before you even ran your track meet.
And so we would do
that. It
that.
is quick energy, but you also burn through it quickly.
Right.
So,
and eating it the night before, I mean,
that would serve no purpose.
Served no purpose.
Yeah.
You would have to load up on carbs. I don't know what the time frame is because I don't know how long it takes for your body to metabolize that and burn it, but clearly not 24 hours before, right? But that's what we did. So we'd have, like, my parents would make spaghetti or some kind of pasta or something so that we would have, potatoes, whatever. And you thought you were doing the right thing. And it really actually didn't do anything other than it was just loading you up with sugar the night before for no reason.
Right. And I've heard people who do like marathons and stuff now that are finding they have had their best times running those marathons fasted as opposed to having carbs before a run or whatever. So they're definitely finding that it's not sustainable. They burn through it, especially if it's a marathon, because they're going to burn through it before they make it to the end and they're going to need something else. Whereas fat, if you're fasted and you're burning on fat, you have plenty of fat stores. So you can run for hours and hours and hours and never burn through it all.
Now, I was a sprinter in high school. And so it would make more sense to maybe eat a candy bar or eat an orange or an apple or something before a race.
But it would have to have been like right before.
But that's what I mean. It would have made more sense. I get that. That quick burst of energy that you're talking about for like a 100-yard or 200-yard dash. I get that. But not for a marathon runner like you're talking about.
Or not to eat it the night before like what you were talking about.
You need a sustainable source of energy for a long period of time.
It even says here that the Germans speculated that sugar might directly influence the nervous system to overcome the feeling of fatigue.
I don't doubt that one bit. Think about energy drinks. People drink energy drinks now for that exact reason.
But I feel like the crash isn't worth it. They probably didn't really study it. They didn't realize, it gives you very quickly, will give you that energy
boost.
So you don't feel tired. But then I feel like the crash makes you feel worse than you did before you even started.
Well, that's true. I mean, we've learned that.
Yeah.
I've experienced that.
And then it makes you just want more.
Well, yeah, so that's the issue. So not only are you getting this like overabundance of the sugar and whatever else they put in it to give you that boost, because I know they add stuff to it now, but that half hour maybe, that you get of like feeling like, oh, I'm wide awake again. The crash, like you said, is so much longer. To me, it's more intense. I don't want to do it.
And then you just need more. So.
And then you're like, I need to feel like I did before. So then you do the same thing and now it becomes repetition and it's an endless cycle.
So it says here that other researchers noticed similar effects in their experiments. They noticed that, the sugar gave people energy. And these observations supported reports from the field that lumberjacks, alpine climbers, polar explorers had taken to using sugar instead of brandy or other alcohol to relieve fatigue, which I don't know that alcohol relieves fatigue either, but they switched over from using alcohol to using sugar. And the owners of horses started feeding sugar to their horses to give them energy and restore vitality.
Well, because they used them as like transportation, like almost like a cab today.
Yeah.
Or like an Uber or something. But that back then, everything was horse-drawn.
Right.
And so they used it as a form. And you've seen in movies and things where they give horses like sugar cubes. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that's what they did.
Yeah, to give them energy.
But again, that's got to be so short-lived. And then what kind of damage are you doing to the horse? I mean, let alone the humans. Obviously, we know that. But what are you doing to a horse?
So then in 1897, of course, they're still debating the value of sugar.
Meanwhile, everybody's getting hooked on it.
As a food, right. They make the decision to test it on German soldiers. And a trial was carried out during autumn maneuvers the following year. The results were conclusively in favor of the sugar eaters. The soldiers given sugar in their rations increased in weight, again. But they considered that to be a good thing, which their comrades did not. They enjoyed better health and were able to support the hard work with much less distress.
Again, short-term results that over the long haul we have seen are not good.
Right.
We have an epidemic of obesity and overweightedness, and I believe that is a direct result of that sugar consumption.
So then after that experiment, which, it doesn't really say how long the experiment was. They could have done this for a week. They're not looking at the long-term effects. They're just looking at, oh, we gave our soldiers sugar and all of a sudden they have, more energy. And because of that, the ration for German soldiers, the sugar was raised to 60 grams per day, which was twice the amount that the British soldiers were getting. They were only getting 37 grams of sugar a day, which seemed to imply that the British soldiers were at a disadvantage.
Yeah, like somehow all of a sudden the German soldiers were just better.
Yeah.
If the British soldiers just waited long enough, the German soldiers would have came down this crash.
And then
once they all crashed, they could have just ran in, took them over, and won the war.
Yeah. So Dutch authorities along these same lines took to advocating for sugar training with their athletes in several of their rowing clubs. They took up the practice of eating what they considered large quantities of sugar so that they wouldn't become stale or overtrained. This was in the mid-1920s when rowing regattas were really popular.
Yeah, rowing then was like, what our professional sports are today, like basketball, baseball, football, that type of thing. But again, I get that because I think most rowing was a speed sport. Mm-hmm. Like you weren't rowing for like a marathon.
Yeah.
It was
a long distance.
It's basically short term. So I get that. I get where the sugar might come in handy when you're doing that. And again, the effects are short term and they're quick. But we're talking about sustainable energy, sustainable long-term health effects. And I think that's where the biggest issue is.
It also says here that in 1925, Harvard researchers reported in the Journal of American Medical Association that runners in the Boston Marathon had very low blood sugar at the end of a race, similar to a diabetic who's given an overdose of insulin. So having them load up on the carbohydrates before the race and eat glucose candies while they ran, supplying them with large amounts of sugar. They had like sugar stations and they provided that with them throughout the race. Because again, just like we talked about before, you're going to take those carbohydrates or those sugars, but you're going to burn through them very quickly.
So if you're running a marathon and you have stations like that, you would have to have dozens and dozens of stations because the amount of sugar that you would need to sustain to run a marathon, which is 26 miles, but you would have to have stations like, and I don't know what the distance would be, but let's just say for the sake of discussion, it was like every mile. So you're going to have 26 or 24 stations or whatever. The amount of sugar that you would have to consume to maintain that level of competition would be enormous.
Because you're gonna burn through that sugar basically in anywhere from a half hour to an hour and a half.
Right.
And then you're gonna need more.
And that just depends on the intensity of the run. So right. Some of these athletes today that run the marathon, they run hard. Mm-hmm. You're gonna burn through that probably 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So think about I don't know how much ground they would cover, but that suggests to me, just based on that you would need a station like every 30 minutes. For a runner.
I think most runners like that just carry glucose tablets with them on them when they're running. So if they start to feel like they're losing speed or feeling fatigued or whatever, they put them like a lot of times like underneath their tongue and they just dissolve.
I'm talking in reference to the era that we're discussing where they didn't have that kind of stuff. Obviously hadn't been created yet. It just, again, goes back to if you're a sprinter, if you're running short distance and you need a quick burst, as opposed to a long distance runner who needs a sustainable source of energy, that's not the way to go.
Yeah.
It's just not the way to go.
In the British Medical Journal, this is where things, like, they contradict themselves. Because, like I said, you had some people saying that, sugar was terrible. And then you had other people saying, oh, these are all the advantages of it. In the British Medical Journal, they said sugar was surely one of the most valuable articles of the diet, and yet to be avoided like poison by those prone to obesity, diabetes, or gout. So it's very important to the diet.
Yeah,
but if you have these health problems, avoid it like poison.
Yeah. It's great, but... Yeah, so this chapter is interesting just because it's going back into the historical aspect of it. Again, laying the foundation. It's not the most glamorous chapter, but it's amazing.
And we only read the first half. This was a long chapter. So we will read the second half on Tuesday next week.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see if the book goes later on in the book, if they draw back on the early bad science
Oh, I'm sure.
To where we are today by today's standards, and how similar it is, and how much of that they still
similar
use.
because it's still a debate. Think about it. This information is not outdated. We're having these same debates now. We are still having people who say sugar causes that list of all the things that are bad, and then you have other people who are saying, well, sugar's not that bad. There are advantages to sugar, you know. And that's obviously big food and...
Well, and again, my opinion on this is that we are so far into it monetarily now. It has become such big business. And we know that everybody's got their hand in it. The government's got their hand in it. Like you said, the food industry has their hand in it. I'm sure there's people in the medical community that just refuse to believe that it's a bad substance. With the internet and with all the information that's out there, which is a good thing, because then you can take what we're saying, what little bit of information we're giving you out of the book, and you can do your own research.
I think most everyone watching this agrees that sugar is not good for you.
No, and I'm not suggesting that, but it's always nice to take information that you've heard or that you read and maybe look into it a little deeper. So hopefully...
But we should learn from history, because especially when we don't want history to repeat itself, we learn from it. But I feel like this debate has been going on for, hundreds of years.
Yeah, well, there's a lot at stake. I mean, besides health, there's just a lot of other things at stake. I just think that now, finally, the health issues that are a direct result of eating too much sugar are finally being put in the forefront. And people are just finally, they've had enough. We talked about the medical community. As a doctor, you should want what's best in the best interest of your patients. But if we think about this, if we were healthier because we stopped eating sugar and carbs and didn't have to go to the doctor as much, and we're talking things that I've experienced, like the inflammation that not only in just your joints, but I've had it in my nasal passages. I believe wholeheartedly that some of the aches and pains that I've experienced over the course of time are not age-related at all. It's all sugar-based. We go to the doctor for that because all of a sudden we don't know what it is. What's causing this?
We're going to put our doctors out of business, basically.
I'm saying, you eliminate that stuff. Now you're not going... We've been blessed. Even when we ate bad, even when we ate poorly, we've still been very healthy, very blessed.
I haven't gone to see my doctor since...
During the shutdown.
Well, no, I went and saw him one time after the shutdown for a follow-up visit because I was still on my medication. You guys, if you haven't seen the video, I did talk about my depression and things that I have dealt with and that I was on medication. And my plan after the shutdown was to get off of the medication. So I went in to talk to my doctor about it, and that was the last time I went to the doctor.
Right, but that's been a minimum of 2 years, if not longer, ago.
And I haven't been to the doctor for anything since.
And I've only been for an annual physical, which is something I do every year anyway because I'm over 50. So I go get an annual physical, but not because I've been sick.
At that point, when I went in for that follow-up visit about my medication with my doctor, I had lost probably about 50 pounds. And he looked at my chart and he says, well, you've lost some weight. How did you do that? And I said, well, I stopped eating sugar. You told me that sugar was the devil and to stop eating it. And it was like he didn't believe that I did what he told me.
What he told you to do, and almost like he forgot that he told you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And so I told him, I don't want to be on this medication, anymore. And he goes, well, is your ultimate goal to cut back on it, or is your ultimate goal to be off of it completely? And I said, I want to be off of it completely. I'm not quite 50 at the time yet. I am now, but I'm not quite 50. I still have a lot of life to live, and I don't want to be on this medication for the rest of my life.
Right.
So that was when, at that point, we started weaning down off of it because I was on pretty, high dose, like 20 milligrams. So he cut it in half at that time, and then we cut it in half again, and eventually I was able to stop taking it altogether. What we're saying is that if we're healthy, the doctors don't have jobs.
Right.
So
they're not as lucrative. I mean, I don't know how you want to look at it. We're
like
always going to need them.
We're always going to have doctors, right? But we're just not going to need them as much as we do now.
Right. And running to the doctor for every little thing. We've come to find out, again, this is just our opinion based on our own personal experience, but the way we have felt when we cut out the carbs and the sugar leads us both to believe that most of what ails us is directly related to what we eat, and that is directly related to the carbs and the sugars that we eat, and the oils and the things like that we should be.
This is just our own personal experience.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I've felt amazing and I felt bad. And when I do my keto flexible, if I get a little nuts with it, meaning multiple times a week, like 2-3 times a week, where maybe we might go out to dinner and I don't eat on plan, I feel it. It happens not instantaneously, but it happens quickly, and it lingers for several days. And so there's no doubt in my mind that that's the cause, because I've been on both sides now. I used to feel like this all the time, meaning, you know, the inflammation and the sluggishness and all that all the time. And I thought that was normal. I attributed it to old, you know, getting older or being less active. And then we went through BBB&E, and that's when my eyes were really, really, really open, when I really realized just how good you can feel. And now that we're not doing that, but we're back to our quote unquote keto lifestyle, there's a big difference and I can feel it. So there's no doubt in my mind that it's directly related to that.
So anyway, that's it for tonight, guys. That was just the first half of chapter 5. So again, we will read the other half on Tuesday next week. We hope you all have a wonderful weekend.
Yes.
We have a lot going on this weekend, lots of plans, but I will be back with you guys. I'll record a video on Monday, an update with my weigh-in results for the week and struggles and successes, all of that stuff on Monday. That video will come out on Tuesday at 10 a.m.
And don't forget to keep moving.
Yeah.
Just because you won't see us until early next week doesn't mean you stop moving.
I might still put out some shorts when we're out walking, but we do have a lot going on this weekend. But we're going to continue to get our miles in, and I hope you guys will let us know how you guys are doing.
Yep, keep us informed.
Yeah, if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already.
I'm not sure where it's at. Where is the subscribe button?
It's below.
Oh, down there. Hey, I don't know. It's not my channel.
Well, also because you don't get on YouTube at all, so you have no idea.
I only get on to read the wonderful comments from all of you.
Yeah. Hit that bell notification. That way when our next video does come out, you'll be alerted to it. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Have a good weekend.